So I'm Jason from PeerJ, and I won't talk a lot about actually what PeerJ is. You can go on the internet and find that out. I will say, though, that we are from lack of a better phrase, a born digital publisher. We don't have a print journal at all. It's all online. We do have PDFs, of course, to download. And because of that, I think that shapes a lot of what we do. And so there's probably a few differences between what a traditional publisher might do. But I guess by show of hands, who's an online-only publisher here or has an online-only journal? And print and online? Yeah, all right. So I think, though, that we're all here wondering this question, or you're here. Should you be doing this? Should you be going to the cloud? Some of you might already be in the cloud. Some of you might not know what the heck the cloud is, or even care, or not want to. So I want to try to keep this discussion a little high level and bring this up a little bit more. And really what we should be asking ourselves is, how can we become more efficient as publishers in the digital age? And I think there's room for improvement for all of us, whether we are born digital and online only, or whether we have print publications as well. And so to help actually answer this, I'm going to enlist the help of Sir Luke Fields and his painting, The Doctor. In the 1880s, Henry Tate commissioned Sir Luke to do a painting on whatever he wanted for Tate Britain. And he came back in 1891 with this painting, The Doctor. And it's a scene from his own life, his personal life. In 1877, his first son, Philip, was dying from tuberculosis. And the doctor's there on the left sitting. And it has an uncanny resemblance, actually, to Sir Luke himself. And what this represents here is the professionalism of the doctor in those days. In those days, hospitals as we knew it didn't exist. There was no NHS, of course, in the US. We didn't have HMOs. There was the general practitioner. He came to your house, and that was it. But at some point, there started to be a transition in the late 19th century, early 20th century, where medicine started becoming more and more advanced. And on top of that, doctors started charging more and more as they started to specialize. And so it no longer was affordable to have a house doctor come and see you. And not only was it not affordable, but also it could cost your life if you weren't getting the specialty care. And so what this led to then was the HMO. And in the 1920s, 1929, the first HMO came about in Texas via Baylor University. And out of that sprouted Blue Shield and so forth. Now think what you want about HMOs and the NHS today, whether they're good or bad. Certainly there's a little bit of both. But one thing's for certain is our health is much better today because we recognize that we could start outsourcing to specialists. And really that's what the cloud is. We're outsourcing to specialists. And a couple tips here then is really what you want to do is do some introspecting and throw out anything in your organization that you're not an expert in. Now that might not be servers and technical stuff. It can be technical efficiencies as well that maybe you're not the most expert in. And the next thing we can learn here is from the Roman Empire. This is a huge question, very complex answer of why the Roman Empire fell. One possibility, though, is that they started forgetting about their citizens back home. They started accumulating land mass, and that was the primary goal, when instead, what their goal should have been was focusing on what their citizens wanted back home and taking care of their needs. And I think there's a lesson from there that we can use as well. I think often we forget about who our customers really are, and we forget about what their actual needs are. And so at PeerJ, before we started doing anything, at the planning stage, my co-founder, Pete Benfield, and myself asked, what is it that we want our customers to be able to do. What are their biggest complaints? Who are they? Is it the library? Is it the reader? Is it the editor and reviewers? Is it the author? For us, it's a mix of all of it. And so we stepped back and looked at what their top needs were. And for us, we felt that we wanted to focus on the software, what they interacted with. So because of that, we ended up building our own submission platform rather than licensing that. We felt that it was very important for us to be able to control that process and make changes whenever we wanted quickly. Pete likes to tell this story of when he was at PLOS. They wanted to insert a new paragraph in the submission system, and they were licensing it from a vendor. I won't say who they licensed it from, but it apparently took 18 months to get one paragraph inserted into the licensed solution for them. And that was a complete nightmare that we did not want to come up against as a born digital publisher. So for us, it was important to be building the software. And because of that, we didn't want to be spending our time, our resources, and our money, our most precious resources, having to worry about maintaining our own server architecture. And that's why we decided to go to the cloud in the first place. The third lesson here as well that we can learn about the Roman Empire really is throw out anything that your customers don't care about. So again, ask yourself, do your customers, do your authors, your reviewers, whomever, do they actually care that you can maintain your own server architecture and have your own big rack space? Do they care that you can print your own books, for instance? If the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't be doing that. And instead, you should be focusing on what they actually do care about. So here's a lesson that I learned from experience, which is, what do you think is easier to maintain? This is a server rack, or something like this? I think that the answer to that is quite clear. So before PeerJ, I was at Mendeley, and this was, of course, back in the day when cloud computing was first coming online. It wasn't that popular, especially here in the UK. It was quite unheard of 4 or 5 years ago to be completely in the cloud. And we started building up our data mining team and trying to process millions of documents, doing things like deduplication, generating recommendations. And we started out buying our own servers, and we got to the point where we had 30-some-odd servers. And we had to get 2 or 3 sysadmins to be able to maintain all that. And all they were doing was going to the data center just to swap out bad hard drives, bad wires. We were spending a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort on just trying to maintain these servers. And often we'd get them and these servers out, and they would be duds, and we'd have to go back to our supplier and get new ones. And it was quite crazy. But at the time, we really did not have that option to outsource to the cloud. And finally, Amazon, though, started becoming a viable alternative to these types of things. One of the first things we started doing at Mendeley in the cloud was actually generating recommendations via Amazon. And we found that it was much cheaper, much more efficient, and the best part was we didn't have to worry about maintaining servers ever again. So we started to slowly transition things over to Amazon. And from that experience, it was decided that this was definitely something we had to do from the start. We had to make everything in the cloud for PeerJ. So that brings us to this lesson here. You need to simplify. And the modern organization today is SaaS oriented. And SaaS, if you don't know, stands for Software as a Service. So you can think of things like Amazon Cloud Services as SaaS, doing Salesforce. There's lots of things that you can outsource. And in fact, even internally, we try to live by the SaaS model. We try to make everything modular that we do in terms of the software stack so that we can replace features and components as easily as possible with either open source alternatives or our own solutions as well. So getting into a little more detail then, this is how we started out, and we we're currently configured. We're able to control everything mainly through what's a service called Scalar. It's a cloud management solution. There's other solutions like RightScale, a few others. Scalar happens to be open source, and you can maintain that if you like, or you can just pay them to host the software for yourself and receive updates behind the scenes on the fly. That's actually what we do, so we pay them. And there's a couple of different packages. If you're looking at how much to be spending, you can either do by the server number. So if you have 5, 10, 20, et cetera, servers, you can pay a fixed price each month, or you can do a variable pricing based on the number of server compute hours that you do. And what Scalar basically does is it lets you scale up and down, hence the name, the number of servers that you need based on traffic, which is extremely handy. So you can, if you get a spike in traffic, you can scale up in a matter of 2 minutes, depending on your system setup. You can put online as many servers as you want and then scale back down immediately. And it's hooked into services such as Amazon or Rackspace, where you pay not for a server for forever or for 1 year, but by the hour. And so you can pay as little as 10 cents an hour, depending on the server, to be able to scale up and down. And then once that traffic has died down, it just scales it back down as well. And you've been able to prevent your site from crashing, more or less. And so what we've done actually is we rely on 2 different services, Amazon and Rackspace, because it's important I think not to rely completely on a single service in case something happens to that. We're able to back everything up that goes into Amazon into Rackspace and vice versa in case there's failover or for failover. And looking at the world map here, this is Amazon. We're primarily based on the East Coast, our server space in the US, and we're able to immediately jump over to the West Coast if the East Coast regional center completely dies out. And actually, we haven't had to do that yet. I doubt we actually ever will. It's fairly redundant, that particular region. If within the region there are multiple data centers, and so you can hop quite easily from data center to data center automatically. Amazon does this all for you. However, if the region does fail, you have to do some of your own work there and set it up such that all that traffic, all the data is transferred over to the West Coast or anywhere else where you see those yellow dots. And so that takes a little bit of work. And we're able to, if such a scenario, we'd be able to get back up in about 5 minutes if we had a complete regional failure. I think the last time such a failure occurred was last December for Amazon. And there was a lot of people noticed because Netflix is running on Amazon. But it was quite an unusual situation. And in fact, we weren't affected by that outage ourselves. Now, if we had to as well, we could go to Rackspace, which is currently located in various parts of the world there. And so those other dots that you see, those blue outline dots, those represent something called a CDN. It's a content delivery network, and basically what that does is it allows you to deliver content more quickly to your site visitors because they're closer to the point of the actual content. And that comes through a service via Amazon called CloudFront, and you pay a little bit more to be able to store that data at these edge points. However, it's quite fast. So we're talking maybe, sorry I'm getting into details and specifics, but instead of waiting maybe a second to be able to download a PDF, you wait maybe 1/10 of a second before it actually starts kicking in. And that, although that's not much time difference, it's for the user, they're quite aware of it, and it can bring about a better user experience. Although we're a small organization, and I would think most publishers, in terms of the amount of content, if we're talking gigabytes, very few are extremely large. No one's like Netflix size or Google size. Yet large companies are in fact using cloud services. I already mentioned Netflix. Dropbox is another huge one, and they're an interesting example as well. While they're born digital, you can think of Netflix as more of the traditional publisher who also happened to transition into the digital world. Dropbox was born digital. All their services run on Amazon. They pay Amazon for the storage, and then users pay them. I imagine maybe at some point Dropbox might find it more efficient to start building their own data centers, but at this point they're still quite happy with Amazon. Netflix uses Amazon for central processing and storage of their data. However, they started building their own CDNs, these content delivery networks, because they found that was better for them, more efficient. They were able to build out more of these CDNs than Amazon currently provides. So lesson number 5, basically the cloud is for all organizations of all sizes. But ultimately, by outsourcing to the cloud, that allowed us to focus on those characters there, our users. And everything then that we do, all our efforts, it goes into the software for them instead of maintaining our infrastructure. And so these are a couple of quotes from Twitter. PeerJ is the most user-friendly submission process ever. Conflict of interest declaration. I'm an academic editor. Working on our first submission, such an elegant interface, I feel like I'm in the MoMA. There are a lot of features in the PeerJ that make my workflow easy. Loved how download risk goes straight to my Zotero, etc. Wow, what a gorgeous journal. And looks like they put a lot of thought into it, perhaps the first truly online journal. I think this is what more and more we'll see users starting to complain when there are poor user experiences, and starting to, of course, applaud those journals that take the extra effort to create that user experience. Last night, we saw one of the shortlisted nominees, Drama Online. They took this approach, trying to make it a clean interface, and I imagine they're probably a perfect example of wanting to outsource things to the cloud. The final thing is that I think using the cloud or outsourcing these types of things has a hidden psychological bonus, that you're on the cutting edge of technology, and it's something that you can be proud to say as well. So in review, throw out anything that you're not an expert in, identify your customer and their top needs, throw out anything your customers don't care about. Be sure that your organization is SaaS supported as much as possible, because that makes transitioning to different things when they fail much, much easier. Clouds for organizations of all sizes, and that hidden psychological bonus of being on the cutting edge of technology. Now, of course, I think there are exceptions to each of these rules, and we break these rules all the time ourselves. These aren't set in stone. Sometimes you want to do things that your customer doesn't care about. But for the most part, I think you'd be served well to follow these tips right here. So that's it, and I think we're open to questions on the panel now.
Okay. Okay, so who's got some questions for Jason on the cloud? Yep, we've got one down here. Hang on, do you want to just wait so we can get a microphone on it so we can get a good recording? Thank you.
Hi, Jason. Yeah, it's working.
We testing 1, 2.
Okay, I'll just speak loudly. Jason, you mentioned that if a region fails, then there's some extra work that you are yourself doing to shift that to another area or something like that. A little bit related to that, what about things like name servers, taking care that your domain names are renewed and your SSL keys are renewed and everything like that? Are you outsourcing that to somewhere too, or doing it yourself?
Yeah, so I didn't get down into...
With an explanation for the less technically brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. first of all, I didn't cover a lot of things, a lot of the fine details in the talk. I tried to keep it at a high level. So there's certainly a lot of caveats of what I said. So of course, we need to be aware of that. First question then about when a region fails, what do we do? Do we have to jump in there ourselves and do a lot of work? You have to prepare for that in advance. So you might have your system administrators write the scripts that are needed to be able to carry out that work. But once the scripts are written, and there's plenty of open source solutions to be able to figure out what those should be. If you use a service like Scalar, it's instant failover. They check out the scripts and do all the switch for you. It is helpful if you set up alerts and you have your system admin there watching to make sure it happens. I wouldn't let it blindly happen. And then you were talking about name servers and DNS. Basically, what name servers and DNS are, for people who don't know, that's when you type in PeerJ.com, for example, it's actually mapped to a IP address, and that's what the whole name server DNS thing does. It maps those two, and then from the IP address, it finds where the servers exist, and then you get your content. So the question was then, what happens when that fails? That is scripted as well. We use Amazon's, what they have called Route 53 for their name server system. And so that is somewhat outsourced as well. The scripts to actually run all this are stored on Scalar. But we're actually, I mentioned that that's our current setup. We're looking at possible other alternatives to Scalar at the moment. Just because it's not all perfect, and we've grown to the point where we want to do a few extra things as well. So we're looking at other services, but it's a fantastic service to definitely start out with and keep you going for quite a long time. One thing I forgot to mention was our budget, actually. And I saw Victor in the audience from Mendeley, so I won't say what the Mendeley budget was. You can ask him. But we were definitely cheaper than what we were at Mendeley. And this is, of course, because we have the advantage of being born in Amazon, where we didn't have that at Mendeley. We're spending right around, I think our bill last month, our IT bill was like $600, and that supports major traffic, much more than we actually get. We could scale up quite easily with that amount. And so we budget for just under $8,000 annually for the next couple of years for our IT expenses, compared to what we were doing at Mendeley or other services. It's quite a bit cheaper and more reliable.
Got a question down there while the microphone's going down there. Hands up if your monthly IT budget is $600 a month.
That's not including, of course, staff salaries for sysadmin, but no.
Hi, James Siddle from Digital Science. So I had a question about if you could compare transitioning into the cloud versus being born in the cloud. Because so in my experience, there are certain pitfalls associated with transitioning existing applications, and some things that can kind of crawl out of the woodwork if you're not, if you don't think very carefully about your approach about how you're going to transition your applications into the cloud. So I just wondered what your experiences have been in this area.
Yeah, it can be a headache. For instance, when we were at Mendeley trying to transition to Amazon, I was telling some people last night, we actually had to deliver the physical hard drives to Amazon because that was the quickest way to transfer all that data and whatnot. There's probably, I think there would be some growing pains as you transition, and it's like I said, there are caveats, and it's not all easygoing. Certainly having sysadmins who have experience with the cloud helps quite a bit. And then the next question, of course, is what do you do with that redundant infrastructure that you've already purchased, but it's probably being written off yearly anyway. So.
Any other questions? So I have one about, I suppose, something to do with the terms and conditions, I guess, of using cloud solutions. So Amazon have a very long set of terms and conditions that you sign up to when you use their AWS service. And one of the things is a nebulous thing about not putting material on there that is inappropriate. And we know that when WikiLeaks data broke cover, that actually Amazon turned off hosting of WikiLeaks data. And they did it on the basis that there was this nebulous clause about harmful material, which is designed to stop people doing other things that I think we can all think about. But they used that clause to effectively turf WikiLeaks off the cloud network. And that was a signal, and a whole bunch of other assorted hosting organizations suddenly decided that on the balance of things, they probably didn't want to be hosting that information as well. So I'm wondering whether there's a fear there that you could be at the mercy of an external decision-making event where, you know, Amazon suddenly turn around and say, we're receiving pressure from an entity. Let's not name that entity, although obviously the NSA are probably already tapping into my brain and thinking about that right now, but could sit there and go, you know, we don't like the tenor of this research paper, it's about viruses or something like that. Turn them off. What's your thought on that?
Well, like I said to you earlier, that would be a good thing for PeerJ, right? Definitely raise our profile if we wound up in such a controversy like that. But the simple solution right now, of course, is, you know, we don't completely rely on Amazon. We also have rack space backups. We could fire up servers there as well and switch over there. Now, some organization might do the same thing then to rack space if there is, you know, some politically sensitive article coming out. You know, and it's a bit turtles all the way down, because you could start doing your own colo servers as well, but then you're still under the terms and conditions of whoever's owning that data center eventually. So, I mean, unless you own the data center yourself, which no publisher, I think, in the world, even Elsevier, could afford to build out, at some point you are at the mercy of your data center provider. So.
Okay. What's other people's opinions? I mean, so hands up, who's either going into the cloud or has it on their strategic roadmap somewhere? Okay. Okay. At the back. Anybody want to talk out loud about that and the thinking there and where you are on that journey? Come on. Share some information with people.
I have a question.
Yeah, okay, go on.
Hi. My question is about performance. It seems like we've gotten pretty far along the path of uptime and redundancy and failover, and these are problems that are farther down the line of being solved. But performance is key, especially as we move to mobile. And there's lots of things you can do that have nothing to do with your hosting architecture to make performance good or bad. Jason, does your technical team have input into the product as well as with when new features or new interfaces are being discussed and bringing performance into play?
Yeah, so you're asking then about non-infrastructure performance, like down to the code level then?
Well, I mean, the performance is, you know, delivering the application to the user, you know, to their phone or to their web browser. So, I mean, obviously, infrastructure plays a role in that, and the application and code does as well. I guess I'm trying to get where for you, how much input performance goes into the product development, or if it has a role at all, or if it's only, you know, your job is to make the performance happen regardless of what the product people want to do with the product.
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly with Amazon, right, you do have the redundancy covered, and if you use it right, you have the speed covered in terms of delivering the content. But then once you're interacting with the application, that's, of course, up to you as the product and software team. And, you know, we try to follow best practices for condensing code, using up-to-date code as well for things that we, when we use open source things, whether it be JavaScript, et cetera, thinking about usability, that's part of performance as well, accessibility, and that is definitely at the product planning stage. But I mean, I guess my whole point about this talk was, right, outsourcing the architecture stuff means you have the time then to focus on that user experience and what works, what doesn't work, and gives you more time to play with Google Analytics and do A/B testing and to figure out what the right copy is. I guess you can include that in performance. So I hope that answers your question. All right.
Yep.
It's not so much a question, but as a comment, really. But we work with some organisations in this room and other organisations, and your comment about the psychological difference. The people we work with who are on cloud-based solutions have got used to working that way, have a strategy to be on SaaS, and the ones who are not move so much faster. Whether that's a good thing or not partly depends on the organisation and what you're trying to do, but it's so noticeable that once they go cloud and once they go SaaS, immediately the pressure is on the IT teams to deliver things faster, lighter solutions, be more flexible, and that impact on the business is really noticeable. The whole sort of, they say it's going to take 6 months, but it never does, goes away. And I think that's a very powerful thing for anybody who wants to do things more quickly.
Anybody else? I mean, just to pick up on that comment, I mean, these things have been broken out into two discrete things, the cloud and Google Analytics. But in listening, it strikes me that actually they speak, and I really like your tip slide, because it's a whole design methodology. It's a philosophy of building great interactive products that people actually want to use at the end of the day. And so there's a whole set of components that need to be put in place there, but then also one needs to have the feedback loops to be able to take advantage of all of that stuff. There's actually not, I mean, if you're not going to respond to anything particularly in a particularly agile manner, then actually why bother going into the cloud? Because you're not going to gain any advantages at all. And the same token, in terms of setting up Google Analytics, you have to want to make use of the information that it's giving you in order to make your business or your decision making or whatever your goals are better, I think, at the end of the day. So I've got one, I guess, because we're coming. Thank you to our two speakers for manfully stepping up and greatly extending their talks from the 15 to 20 minutes that I said they had to stick to originally when we were putting this together. I've got a question really again for the audience. If anybody would like to volunteer here or put your hands up or something, who's got a team in place to try and take outputs from things like Google Analytics and actually do some business analysis of that information with a view to driving change within the business? Has anybody got a team or a person or a go-to person that does that kind of stuff? Cabby, maybe, yeah, okay. Anybody else? Who thinks they need that role? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, that's RSC at the back there, just put their hands up. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so they're trying to do it. Yeah. Okay. There's a microphone coming down. Just want to repeat that so we can get that again.
So it's Emma Wilson, the Royal Society of Chemistry. Although I think we can probably do a better job of our data analytics, and we do have go-to people. One person in particular that spends a lot of time. You know, she has a team that puts a lot of the analytics together, but she spends a lot of time reaching out to other parts of the organisation to kind of embed what they've learned into our kind of strategic decision making. So we're starting on that. I'm not sure we completely got it right, but there is something in place.
Yeah, I'd actually add to that it's something that, you know, it'd be good to have one person or a team dedicated to it, but it's something that the whole business needs to be bought into. You need to be all using the same metrics. So define success, and then everyone uses that. So the product team, finance, marketing team, everyone is looking to boost these micro and macro conversions. There's no point the finance team only focusing on revenue when the marketing team are focusing on driving traffic. If they're in the product team are just building cool features. If they're not all married up together, then yeah, it's a recipe for disaster.
These are endpoints of strategic processes at the end of the day, that they should be. Go on, we've got.
Richard Padley from Semantica. David, if I could just, you can either tell me I'm mad or entertain this quick question, which is a question to the audience. And I wondered, given that we'd had quite an interesting and detailed discussion of some of the aspects of user experience, particularly with regards to building stuff that works fast, how many people here have got a program that's actually actively addressing that issue of, you know, how fast their websites work?
Okay, we've got one. IOPP and the RSC. Who else? Anybody else? Anybody? Okay. All right.
Thank you for indulging me.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, we actually, to go on that, we actually use a couple different services. Pingdom's one of them. There's a few others that we get daily, weekly, monthly reports on how fast our servers have been responding in different sections of the world. We can segment that as well, and we try to keep that down to a several hundred milliseconds range for the response. A lot of that, of course, has to do with using caching servers and that CDN and everything.
So just to add to that, so there's somebody here, I don't know if she's in the room or not, that is a proud owner of Google Glass. And the reason I bring that up is to bring this back to the issue of speed, is that is still Google's #1 metric for all of their products, is speed. Because the only reason Google Glass actually works is that what actually happens is that anything you do on the device is actually quite dumb, right? It connects to your mobile phone, and then whatever you've asked it to do gets pinged off to some Google servers sitting a very, very long way away, and then that information comes back to you, and it has to come back incredibly quickly. Otherwise, the lag time is so long, the thing will seem unresponsive, or you will get impatient. And it's been their #1 criteria for getting information to users since they started, speed. And I think that's a very, very important thing for us all to think about, actually, at the end of the day, is should we be satisfied with the performance of some of our products when you roll up to a website and Google's giving it you so fast, you don't even notice the lag, and we are sitting there waiting 5, 10 seconds, something like that, for a piece of information. I think it's a very important point.
We actually, and this is open to the public, you can go to status.peerj.com and see basically the uptime of our servers, how fast we're responding to you in different areas of the world. That's at a high level. It's all publicly available. And that's hosted off of Amazon, actually, just in case we do go down. We can send out maintenance, and people can take a look, and it's hosted on our Twitter and everything. So.
Okay, well, not to do badly, actually. Now, a housekeeping announcement. There is going to be, you're going to come up, do you want to come up and do it?
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
Can I just thank you again for an excellent session, and also the comments from the audience. It's a fantastic session, really, really interesting. But I just wanted to say we can come down from the cloud to the firm terrain of the annual general meeting of ALPS. It's just a reminder that that's taking place in this room at 12 o'clock. All ALPS members are welcome to find out what has been going on in ALPS over the last year and what the plans are for the future. So do feel free. There'll be plenty of time. It'll be limited to around about half an hour, so plenty of time for lunch and networking after that. And then, as you'll see in your program, we're back into streams for three parallel sessions, three very interesting parallel sessions this afternoon. Yeah, hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to Jason, thank you to Alan, Naomi, get well soon, and join me in giving them a round of applause for their talks. Thank you.